My Limerick with Mary Honan. Weekdays from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. and repeated at 4 a.m. Wherever you are, we're here.
Díogh Galera Cordia August Tá Fáilte Road. Welcome everyone to My Limerick. It's a show I'll be doing every day once we get started and get out of this COVID-19 lockdown here in Ireland. Apparently where Yocheved is, it's not completely locked down, but here it pretty much is. As some of you may know, my background, I spent the bones of over a decade researching the impact of World War II on its youngest victims, the child, irrespective of nationality, race or creed, but predominantly it has to be said that 6 million Jews died under the Nazis, and of that 1.5 million were children. And my first guest tonight, and I'm absolutely delighted to be speaking to her, is a lady I've become friends with through my research, and her name is Yocheved Artzi, and she lives in Georgia. Hi, Yocheved.
Hello, good morning. Here is the morning.
Yeah, and here it's 4:45 in the evening. What was I going to say to you, Yocheved? You were telling me firstly that your son had a major birthday yesterday. I hardly believe you're that old enough to have a son.
He's my youngest son. He turned 40 yesterday.
40, my goodness. And you had quite a celebration.
Yes, we had celebration over Zoom, through Zoom, with people all over the world. In particular, Colombia, Israel, United States. It was fantastic.
Isn't Zoom fantastic?
It's unbelievable. I'm using it to talk to my clients. I'm a therapist, marriage and family therapist, and it's very helpful. And we have more confidential sites to talk to people.
Yeah, you have an amazing site that's really confidential.
Yeah, doxy.me.
Doxy.me. Yocheved, you were amazingly helpful when I was writing my doctoral thesis, and I interviewed you for it, and it was about your book, Stealing German Bread, based on your mother's life. Your mother was a child survivor of the Holocaust. Maybe you'd like to tell us a little bit about your mother's life and how you got to writing her book and her memoir.
I grew up in Israel and moved to America at the age of 40. And only when I moved to America, I started to hear from my mother stories about the Holocaust, what she went through in Auschwitz. She was from Siget, a small town in Transylvania, Hungary, Romania. Mm-hmm. And she was in Budapest when she heard that the German came to her little town. So she left Budapest and went back to the small town, Siget, to help the family. She helped them very little, but they were immediately transferred to Auschwitz. and most of the family were killed immediately in the gas chambers.
Yeah.
My mother and her sister went to workforce. They survived because they were young, around 20, 25, and they were able to work for the Germans, for the Nazis. So she survived Auschwitz, was horrible. 1 year in the camp from 1994, May 1994 to 95, if I'm not mistaken.
44 to 45.
Yes, for May, yes. They were released in May in Bergen-Belsen.
Yeah.
So when I moved to America, she started telling me stories over the phone. And when she came to visit me in America, she started to tell me more and more, continue to tell me. And I put it in book. I wrote every word she said. I made my own research, of course, the background. And I wrote a book. And she was very happy that she was not able to write a book because of so much pain.
Yeah.
But I was able to do it for her.
And tell me a little bit, Yocheved, about her life when she actually came out from the camps, from Auschwitz. And has she ever been back to Auschwitz?
Never. Never to Auschwitz, but she went back after the war. She went back to her little town to see what left and to find some documents and books that were hidden in the walls. And she didn't. The people that took the house from, they did not allow her to enter. She entered a little bit, but it was very quick, and she left. And she lived in a refugee camp until she moved to Israel. In 1948, they were able to move to Israel. 1948, Israel got her independence.
That's right, yes.
The United Nations, and she moved at that time and established her life in Israel. And she was a very, very remarkable woman, how she overcame all the trauma and established her own life. And then I was born in Israel.
You were born in Israel.
1951.
Yocheved, to people who may not understand the importance of Israel to survivors, particularly of the Shoah, how important was having Israel, a homeland, to people like your mother?
Yes. For 2,000 years, all the Jews were in diaspora, in exile, all over the world. All of a sudden, after the war, the United Nations recognized the need for the Jews to have a state, to come back home.
Mm-hmm.
So when my mother came back, like many others, she was so happy and proud and felt safe that she has a place to be, and nobody will take her to exile. And they worked very hard in anything possible. Even doctors and highly educated people worked in building houses and building a country.
Building a country, because it's safe to say to them it was probably the only place in the world where they could be Jewish and not be either persecuted or pushed out of.
Exactly.
Or asked to leave because they were foreign to the land.
Yes, they felt that they came home.
That's it. And, to a rehomed, if you like, to a Holocaust survivor who has found their homeland or has been returned to their homeland. What was it like for people like your mother, or for you growing up, knowing that many of the people around you were also Holocaust survivors? Did they become friends? Did they become more than friends? Did they become family that so many had lost during the Shoah?
It's a very good question. Usually people talk about the Shoah, but they don't talk about how they survived after.
Yeah.
that's very important to know how the impact of the trauma on the individual and on the family and on the nation, on the neighborhood. I grew up in a small town, Bnei Barak, and all my neighbors were survivors. And we, as children, we were not allowed to ask and to talk about it, but we had our own understanding. We did talk about it. And every neighbor in my building, in our building, had a name, like, and we knew the story behind this person. So as children, we were talking about what happened to them. Like, for example, one particular neighbor, she lost her mind a little bit.
Yeah.
And we said, okay, then we will not make her upset because she saw her children get killed. Another neighbor, we knew his story. He lost his wife and children in the Holocaust, and he was also not stable emotionally. So we knew to be quiet around him, not to get him upset. So, and our parents, they had friends from there. They said, from there, they called it there. And they knew the stories, but they didn't share it with us. But we, as children, we were very curious and we researched our own research.
Yeah.
And the community also helped the survivors by many ways, like organizations for survivors. But also there was some kind of animosity by people that didn't come from there. They were like, we don't want to hear about your story.
Yeah.
You know, there was some of this too. Kind of, they didn't know what to do with it. So we don't want to hear.
Well, there's a book by Art Spiegelman. It's called, it won the Pulitzer Prize. They weren't quite sure whether to put it into fiction because he had the characters of his father and his mother and all of them as mice, and he represented the Poles as pigs and the French as frogs. So he stereotyped his characters as the Nazis would have stereotyped people in those days. It won the Pulitzer Prize. Art Spiegelman is the son of an Auschwitz survivor, yes, father, and an Auschwitz survivor mother who didn't look Jewish. His father didn't look Jewish, so he was able to survive. His mother had a more difficult time because she was what they would have termed as the stereotypical Jewish-looking woman, and it was more difficult for her to hide or to pretend that she was Aryan. But he wrote this magnificent book called Maus, M-A-U-S, and he talks about how when his mother committed suicide because of her son's death in Auschwitz, his father remarried, and the woman he remarried was also a survivor, but they never got on because they were constantly reminders to each other of what they had both suffered.
Yes.
And as a therapist, you must understand that it can be comforting to be around survivors, all of your friends being survivors, you have that in common. It must surely also be a constant reminder to people who don't want to be reminded, who are trying to block it out. How did your mother fit in with that?
Absolutely. You are with the children. She did not want to talk about it with us. And she used to say, I don't want to make you sad. If you want to know, read books. And I knew everything. I read obsessively. I read books. I wanted to know what's happened to my mother.
Yeah.
But you are absolutely right. As I am a trauma specialist, because I wanted to know as much as possible. And I learned in my trauma education that many people deal with the trauma in a different ways. Some people don't want to talk about it, don't want to hear about it. Some people constantly talk about it, obsessively.
Mm.
So yeah, so to answer your question, my mother's survival method was, you don't talk with the children. They don't need to be said. But with her friends, they had some good memories.
Yeah.
They were speaking Yiddish, so we
Yiddish, yeah.
will not understand. Also, they were speaking Hungarian, Romanian, even German.
Wow.
They were speaking all these languages, so the children will not understand. But with their friends, yes, they were
Yeah.
talking about it.
It's amazing because, you know, even another book by Ruth Eisenstein, I Was a Child of Holocaust Survivors. She talks about the obsession she had with knowing about her parents' past. She was constantly delving into, as she said, a past that was not hers, but felt hers. And she didn't know where her life began and theirs ended.
Yes.
Her life was so wrapped up in her parents and their friends' experiences that she wanted. It was like an addiction, and it was like a drug that she had to have more and more and more to try and find out their past. Were you like that, Yocheved? Did your mother's reluctance to talk about it to you make you want to learn more about it, or was it something that you just found out about because your mother felt like talking about it at some stage? I presume your mother had a number on her arm.
No, my mother did not have a number, and this was a question I dealt with many years. And the question was why she didn't have the number. And I learned later when I did my own research that by the time my mother arrived to Auschwitz, they were out of the ink to make the tattoo.
Wow.
Yes, but all her friends had it. She arrived on May 44 or April 44, and they were out of the ink.
The ink.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So fortuitous in some respects.
To answer your question about obsession, I was not obsessive. I had normal childhood happiness, but we also have this big elephant in the room.
In the room, yeah.
That
do you find now, looking back in hindsight, that had your mother been more upfront, had she spoken about it more to you, it might not have been that elephant in the room. It might have been something that you had grown used to understanding, if anyone can understand. I don't think even the survivors themselves will ever understand, comprehend the savagery and barbarity that was imposed on them. But do you think that not knowing about it shielded you, or did it make you more curious?
Yeah,
later.
It made me more curious, but also safe, because there was not the environment in the house was normal.
Yeah,
that's what she wanted, to have normal life, and that's how she continued with her life. She survived by not sharing it only with the people that went through the same experience.
Because it's safe to say that no matter how much you can empathize with somebody, and certainly empathize or feel sorrow or feel, I suppose, a sense of belonging to the experience yourself as the daughter, it's never quite the same as what it would be for your mother and for her friends who had actually gone through it firsthand. And even as a therapist, I'm sure you probably might agree, to each individual survivor, their experiences, though collectively the same, were very different, because each went through the trauma differently or experienced it.
Absolutely. And I will tell you, from reading many books and stories or hearing my friends my age, some families did not have normal life.
Yeah.
They where the children were highly abused emotionally, and physically, emotionally, by their parents, that they did not allow them to have a normal life, because their parents did not have emotional stability. They inflicted it on the children. And we even have, we had and we still have psychology groups for children of survivors, because they really were affected. And so I'm very glad that my mother was like that. She wanted a normal life in the house. And I'm also very sorry for many famous Israeli figures and their stories, how they survived.
Yeah.
We even have a famous singer in Israel that said that when his father died, he was born again.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was the same with Vladek Spiegelman, or Art Spiegelman and his dad. They had a very tumultuous relationship.
Yes.
Vladek seemed to be incapable of having a relationship with his child because he had been so deprived of, and he constantly went around with pieces of bread in his pocket, or stealing little containers from the side of the hospital bedroom, thinking that maybe he mightn't be able to find that might come in useful, or just wearing the one outfit all the time because he had no need for another suit. One was enough. One pair of shoes was enough. Quirky little things that many survivors, and I spoke about it in my book, about how trauma affected survivors to the extent that some spoke about it constantly and had very good relationships with their children. Others then were overly protective, or had no relationship at all with their children because they were emotionally stunted.
Yes.
You know, and I'm interested in whether you agree with that or not.
I agree with it completely. From stories that I hear from my classmates and friends, they were emotionally deprived, or they were emotionally abused by words and putting down and belittling a child that is not good enough because the parent had some emotional complication. And many mothers were not able to have this attachment to their children, because a particular mother used to say, if I attach and then you will disappear, it will be horrible again.
Obsessive compulsive and overprotection.
Yes, yes.
That was another thing actually I touched on in the book, was how the children almost become the survivors.
Yes, exactly.
Because you're living, as Ruth Eisenstein said, you're living their life. In many respects, their life seems more heroic than your life. How could your life ever compare with the struggle and the survival of your parent? In many cases, people felt, you know, my life is I'm never going to do anything that's as heroic or as survivalist as my mother or my father or my aunts did, do you know?
And the other side of it, it's also very helpful in this Corona time. We have difficulties like social isolation. I cannot visit my grandkids, and it's very difficult. So I always say to myself, this is nothing, it's okay. My mother survived Auschwitz. She went through hell. She saw all her family get burned, turned to ashes in the gas chambers. So for me not to see my grandkids, you know, for a few months, that's okay. We are all healthy. We are alive.
That's a very good point that I'd like to maybe ask you about. The fact that your mother and people like her, as Holocaust survivors, Shoah survivors, did that in a sense equip people like her to actually go through this experience of social isolation in a way that maybe we who have not gone through such trauma could never imagine. I mean, I'm an only child, so being on my own has never been a problem. I've always been able to find something to do. I'm the only child of an only child. So I was always used to my own company. But for people who are so used to people and being around clutter and being around things and being around people, social isolation must be very difficult. But to somebody like your mom or people, her friends or her family who did survive, it must be that, is it that bit easier?
It's horrible. In Israel, we are watching the Israeli news, so we are highly connected to what's happening in Israel. The Holocaust survivors are experiencing second trauma.
Yeah.
They are most of them are in elderly homes, nursing homes.
Nursing homes, yeah.
And they are isolated for so long, and it's really has its toll on them. They are really suffering.
Yeah.
I hear it every day. Now that the lockdown is a little bit easing up in Israel, the children can come to visit from a distance. So they come to the nursing home and their parents goes down to the yard and they wave to each other. But many Holocaust survivors are really re-experiencing the trauma of isolation.
Yeah, because one would imagine that memories that have been successfully pushed to one side through the clutter and noise of life and family are suddenly coming to the fore again when you only have yourself and your thoughts.
Exactly.
If you're trapped every day, or if you're isolated every day without the power of Zoom or social media, and you don't understand how to use it, you've only got your thoughts, and they're often thoughts that you were successfully able to push to one side through your grandchildren, through your children, through life. You can't do that now with COVID-19, so they're exposed once more.
Yes. But the nursing home administrators and social workers and nurses, the health team, they are aware of it and they are trying their best to entertain, to get them out of the room, to send them. Even we just celebrated Independence Day, so singers.
That's right,
yeah. Singers and actors were acting and performing around across from the nursing home to make them happy. The families come around to wave with flags. So they're finding ways, but there are a lot of single, no families survivors, and they're really struggling. However, many new organizations just started, sending food, sending a visit the lonely people that they don't have any family, no children. It took a few days or few weeks to get organized, and now every survivor has people that adopting him or her.
That's a lovely gesture.
Yes.
Adopt a grandmother, adopt a grandfather.
Yes.
Sort of thing.
In many ways, and that's fascinating.
Do you think that an event such as the Shoah and has like when the Irish went to America, they all congregated in places like Boston, Chicago, places like that, and they all stayed within their own little groups because there was safety in numbers and there was safety in familiarity, and people could adjust to a new lifestyle whilst still being able to have a sense of their homeland. Do you think that that what has actually bonded Israel as a country through its survivors, is that people have a sense of familiarity, a sense of, even though they may have all come from different countries in Europe, they've all gone through that experience together. So therefore, they're all a family through suffering, and a family through experience rather than genetics, or and has that bonded them in a way that probably other groups all over the world mightn't have been bonded.
Yes, absolutely. Israel is a very small country. So,
Tiny.
yeah, very small. It's a size of half of New Jersey. And every town, every neighborhood, they have their own community and their own support, even neighbors. And we also had a lot of Jews coming from Africa.
Yes, that's right, yes.
Yes, and the Balkans, Turkey, Yugoslavia. So Jews came from all over. And at the beginning, as we know, we had groups that were not very popular, and there was some social issues that the Holocaust survivor experienced. As I said earlier, a little bit hostility. We don't want to hear your story. Why didn't you fight? But there was also a lot of support from their brothers and sisters or neighbors. So we had both, a lot of support and some hostility. And the government, of course, the government was very supportive.
Yes.
But also hard a little bit on the people.
Yeah, as governments tend to be.
Yes.
But what was I going to say to you? What made you decide to up sticks and move from the hot climates of Israel, or the hot climate of Israel, to the equally hot climate of Georgia in the US?
Yes, we are experiencing the same weather almost. It was education and economic issues. Education, the whole family I went to universities here, and the children went to higher education here. Also economical issues of hardship in Israel, we decided to move. We had family here too. My husband had a sister.
Is your husband from Israel also?
Yes, we are all from Israel. We moved here when we were 40. And my
40?
40, yeah, the age of 40, yeah.
You only look about 40 now.
Yeah, it was 25 years ago.
My God.
Yeah, a little bit more.
Yasha, you shouldn't give away your age at all. You look like you.
I'm very proud.
Yeah, well,
I'm very proud of every age, every year, every day. I'm very proud to be alive and healthy, and to do things for the community.
And how have you adjusted to you? You still haven't lost your accent, and it's lovely. No. Yeah, but how have you adjusted to the Georgian way of life? What do you do in Georgia apart from? Tell us a little bit about your work.
Okay. Yes, I'm licensed marriage and family therapist. Before that, I was a nurse working in a hospital, and now we have also a food business. We are organic growers. We have a wonderful vegetables garden, and we also have this small business kitchen here that we make Israeli food, and we sell it to supermarket, high quality supermarket in Tallahassee, Florida, which is our neighbor. We are on the border between Florida and Georgia. And we also have this farmer's market, Lake Ella in Tallahassee, and we sell our food and falafel, and people really love it. So we have both the two worlds, one of the earth and growing amazing veggies organically, and we cook and bake, and I have this, another side of my garden is my office. And now
and then you work at treating the soul through your therapy.
Yes.
And treat the soul and the mind.
Yeah, I have a lot of referrals from health insurance companies, and I'm very happy. Now I do a lot of teletherapy, as I said earlier, because many people don't want to come, but people that want to come, they insist of coming to my office, sit outside in the garden, and it's a closed garden, it's confidential, and we have this social distance that we need.
It sounds glorious.
Yes, it is very soothing.
Would you ever return to Israel?
We return to Israel twice a year for visits.
No, but to live?
Not to live completely, maybe, we don't know, but right now, twice, sometimes even 3 times a year, we go to visit and we stay for 2 weeks. My daughter and her 4 children and her husband, they're doing very well in Israel. And I have a son in Detroit with 2 children and a beautiful wife. And I have a son in California with his wife and his 2 children. They are doctors doing amazing jobs.
And I suppose your book that you wrote on your mother's life and her experiences, how did that come about? There's a lovely story about her ringing you.
Yeah. I had a very interesting client one day, it was a long time ago. She said, "You have to write the story of your mother." She said to me, and I said, "What?" She said, "Start with 1 paragraph a day."
Just to ask you about your mother's experiences again, and how you actually managed to document her experiences and how that
Yes.
came about.
Yes. So this client, I had a very interesting client, and I suggested her to write her story. She said, "You need to write your story too." And I said, "Wow, I can't. I didn't even, I didn't even imagine it." And she said, "Well, you start with 1 paragraph a day," and I did, and I finished the book in 2-3 months. Because
And
when I started it, that's it. And I'm so happy that I did it because my mother was so delighted.
yeah,
It made her so happy. When I published the book and I gave her the first copy, she was in nursing home, she walked with it. She didn't leave it for a second. She showed everybody, "This is the story of my life." It was in English. So she was able to read it, but there are also pictures. So this book was attached to her until she passed away at the age of 96.
who passed away?
My mother.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I did not know.
Yeah,
When?
she was 96, 4 years ago.
Oh, I didn't actually know that your mom had passed away.
Yes.
Uh,
4 years ago, she was 96 years old.
uh, she died peacefully.
Yes, yes, she was very old.
Yeah, but still, she had been through so much.
Yes. But I think before she died, she didn't remember anything anymore.
Yeah. Oh, she had Alzheimer's, had she?
Dementia, elderly dementia, yeah.
And in some respects, but I spoke to another friend of mine whose dad had dementia for the last few years of his life, but for all of those, he was still trapped within the Shoah, because those experiences were so ingrained that he still had the little idiosyncrasies.
Really?
He still used to go around and put bread into his pocket, and
that was the case with my mother too. Her drawers were always full of rotten bread and hard-boiled eggs and bananas. And when I came to visit her, she said, "Do you want to eat? Are you hungry?" She was offering me some food from her drawer, and I cleaned it up for her, of course. Always she was. And this is something I want to tell you, that it goes to the second generation too, to me. Whenever you will see me with food and water, always, and money in my pocket, you know. So just in case something happened, I will have survival kit.
It's survival trauma, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, and that I will always have a little food around me. If I travel somewhere, always have my own food.
It's amazing.
Well, you will never find me without food or water or money.
Yeah, it's a good survival kit, isn't it, to have?
Yes.
Well, Yocheved, it was immensely, I'm immensely proud to have, one, to have got to know you, two, to have had your contribution to my book and to my research, and three, to call you a friend.
Yes.
And I'm really grateful to you today for allowing me to get an insight into your experiences and your mother's experiences.
Thank you so much. And stay healthy.
And you too, Yocheved. Shalom.
Shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
My Limerick with Mary Honan. Weekdays from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. and repeated at 4 a.m. Wherever you are, we're here.